The world is shifting, and the headlines tell the story. A major trade war looms as China pushes back against new U.S. tariffs. In the UK, lawmakers clash over the fallout, while Senator Bernie Sanders takes a stand against military aid to Israel, but Congress quickly shuts him down. A tragic loss in Lithuania as American soldiers are honored. And back in Washington, the Pentagon faces scrutiny over secret war discussions on an encrypted app. Meanwhile, markets tumble. Argentina claims a surprising economic victory, and Hungary makes a bold exit from the International Criminal Court. All this and more. Let's get into today's top stories. The United States and China are on a collision course over trade. Beijing has condemned the latest round of tariffs imposed by President Trump, calling them a violation of international trade rules and a threat to global economic stability. The new 34% tariff on Chinese goods set to take effect on April 9th builds on previous tariffs, bringing the base rate to 54%. If Trump follows through with an additional 25% tariff in response to China's purchase of Venezuelan oil, the total tariff could skyrocket to 79%. In response, Chinese officials have accused the U.S. of engaging in unilateral bullying and warned of potential countermeasures. The Ministry of Commerce described the tariffs as aggressive and unjustified, arguing that trade wars produce no winners. The situation remains tense as China prepares its response. Across the Atlantic, UK lawmakers are divided over the implications of U.S. tariffs. The Labour Party blames Prime Minister Keir Starmer for failing to secure a quicker trade deal with Washington. In response, Starmer has promised a level-headed approach, emphasizing ongoing negotiations. Some lawmakers have floated the idea of an economic alliance to counterbalance Trump's policies, a concept Canada and the EU had previously considered before Trump threatened additional economic penalties. In Washington, Senator Bernie Sanders has introduced resolutions aimed at blocking $8.8 billion in U.S. military aid to Israel, arguing that continued arms sales violate American law and contribute to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Sanders claims that the U.S. cannot credibly condemn human rights violations while simultaneously supporting Israel's military operations. However, the resolutions faced overwhelming opposition, failing by votes of 82 to 15 and 83 to 15. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, denounced Sanders' effort as a dangerous move that undermines Israel's security. Meanwhile, Senator Adam Schiff warned that blocking the aid would weaken Israel's ability to defend itself. Despite Sanders' objections, military assistance to Israel is set to continue. Thousands of Lithuanians lined the streets of Vilnius to honor 4 American soldiers who lost their lives in a training accident near the Belarus border. The soldiers were part of an armored brigade working to recover a disabled vehicle when their own recovery vehicle became submerged in a bog. After an intensive search, their remains were recovered, bringing an emotional conclusion to a tragic event. The fallen soldiers have been identified as Staff Sergeant Troy Knutson Collins, Staff Sergeant Jose Duenas Jr., Staff Sergeant Edwin Franco, and PFC Dante Taitano. Military officials have expressed deep sorrow, calling the loss devastating. Meanwhile, a major scandal is unfolding in the Pentagon. The Defense Department Inspector General has launched a formal investigation into Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of an encrypted messaging app to coordinate military operations against Houthi rebels in Yemen. The inquiry follows revelations that top officials used Signal to discuss real-time military strikes, information that was accidentally leaked to a journalist. The investigation will determine whether Hegseth and other officials violated Pentagon policies or mishandled classified information. Acting Inspector General Stephen Stebbins has made it clear that the probe will be independent, with potential legal consequences depending on the findings. However, President Trump has dismissed the controversy outright, calling it a wasted story. In Europe, Hungary has announced plans to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. The move coincides with a visit from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is facing an ICC arrest warrant over alleged war crimes in Gaza. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has criticized the ICC's actions, calling them outrageously impudent. Hungary's departure from the court could further isolate the institution as it struggles with enforcement challenges. Back in the U.S., the Trump administration has introduced a controversial new requirement for public schools. K-12 institutions must now certify that they do not engage in diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) practices in order to receive federal funding. Schools that fail to comply could lose access to crucial financial assistance, including Title I support for low-income districts. The administration argues that DEI initiatives violate federal civil rights laws, while critics warn that the policy could undermine educational equity. On Wall Street, U.S. stocks plunged after Trump's tariff announcement, with the S&P 500 dropping 4%, its worst opening since 2022. The Dow Jones tumbled by 1,500 points, while the Nasdaq fell 5%. Companies with heavy reliance on international supply chains, such as Nike and Apple, suffered steep losses. Traders had expected lower tariff rates, and the market reaction signals growing fears of a prolonged global trade conflict. Trump's tariffs are impacting countries worldwide, including some unexpected locations. The remote Heard and McDonald Islands, an uninhabited Australian territory, have been hit with a 10% import tax, despite lacking any significant trade with the U.S. The tariffs are calculated based on America's trade deficit with each nation, a method that economists criticize as misleading. Experts warn that imposing tariffs based on trade imbalances ignores fundamental economic principles, such as comparative advantage and consumer demand. The Environmental Protection Agency has quietly created a new portal, allowing companies to request presidential exemptions from 9 Clean Air Act regulations. The Trump administration has positioned the move as a way to reduce bureaucratic obstacles, but critics argue that it opens the door to increased pollution. Environmental groups warn that granting exemptions to industrial polluters could have long-term consequences for public health and climate policy. Despite economic uncertainty, the U.S. job market posted strong gains in March. The private sector added 155,000 jobs, surpassing expectations. Manufacturing saw a notable rebound, while professional services and finance experienced steady growth. Wages also rose 4.6% year over year, indicating continued labor market resilience. However, regional differences remain, with the western U.S. seeing job losses while the Northeast and Midwest reported gains. Finally, in Argentina, poverty rates have dropped significantly, falling from 53% to 38.1% in the second half of 2024. Inflation has also declined sharply under President Javier Milei, dropping from 276% to 66.9%. Milei's government credits economic liberalization and fiscal responsibility for the improvements. However, critics argue that austerity measures have worsened everyday struggles for many citizens, leading to protests over rising living costs. That's all for tonight's news update. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue to monitor these stories and bring you the latest developments. Stay safe, stay informed, and have a good night. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update.